Hello, citizens of Canada. We are anonymous. Yesterday the individual behind the original WikiLeaks account was forced to resign, almost certainly due to pressure from the Liberal Party, of which they were a member. The WikiLeaks account constituted a completely legal form of protest in the face of Vic Toews' hypocrisy. A hypocrisy neither the government of this country nor its traditional media were willing to expose, out of fear of political and public backlash. You cannot have it both ways, Mr. Toews. You cannot make the claim that you are a man with traditional values, faith, and personal integrity, and then cry foul when it is revealed you are anything but. Fellow citizens, there is something deeply wrong with this country. Politicians who practice near-constant deception and attempt to undermine our civil rights are offered support and apologies, while those who expose their hypocrisy are shamed and quietly forced from their jobs. Anonymous condemns the cowardly actions of the Liberal Party, who seek to appease Vic Toews, and the Conservatives who support him. And Anonymous stands behind the individual who created the original WikiLeaks account. We applaud your efforts to expose the hypocrisy, crimes, and personal misconduct of a man who would have all of Canada beneath the eye of this corrupt government. We, as Canadian citizens, thank you. And as Anonymous, we promise you will be avenged. It has become clear that anyone who exposes corruption in Canada is risking a great deal. When transparency cannot be found in government and is punished when enacted by the public, it must be accomplished through other means. Therefore, Anonymous will continue to expose information not only about Vic Toews, but the Harper government of which he is a part. The following information will be of particular interest to those in Manitoba who wish to protest Mr. Toews' disgusting actions and remarks. Vic Toews is the MP representing the federal electoral district of Provencher. The Provencher Conservative Association holds annual general meetings early in the year, which Mr. Toews attends. However, this year, neither the Provencher Conservative Association nor Vic Toews' website indicate that an annual general meeting is even scheduled, let alone when or where. This is because the Provencher Conservative Association wants Mr. Toews to be able to strategize in peace, unhindered by pesky annoyances like protesters. Fortunately, we have been informed and can now inform the public that this meeting will take place on March 3rd, in Steinbach, with Vic Toews in attendance. We have no doubt that there will now be a mad scramble to change this date and add this information to their websites, which is why we have not released this information until now. Anonymous encourages all members of the Canadian public who oppose Bill C-30 to make their voices heard on March 3rd, in Steinbach. And we welcome any additional information that can be provided by the public in regard to Mr. Toews' schedule. As for the Harper government, Anonymous has been watching, along with the rest of Canada, as the voter suppression scandal continues to snowball. We will not discuss this in detail as it is being covered by nearly every Canadian media outlet. However, we want to address two remarks made by Peter MacKay, MP for Central Nova Scotia and Minister of National Defence, before they are completely lost in a sea of rhetoric and accusations. Quote, "I think they've identified the individual that was involved in this," and, quote, "It's inappropriate behavior to say the least." Yes, Mr. MacKay, widespread voter suppression is indeed very inappropriate. How fortunate that the individual responsible, a single staffer, was exposed almost immediately. After all, a young man capable of masterminding and executing a plan to harass and misdirect voters from 40, and counting, different ridings, with flawless timing, certainly poses a risk to functional democracy in this country. Though one does wonder, if a single individual were intelligent enough to pull off such a scheme, how did they find themselves caught so quickly once the scandal broke? Anonymous has been relatively civil in our videos up until now, but these statements are so absurd we must declare this a giant, steaming pile of bullshit. It boggles the mind that a public figure would describe voter suppression using the same language that a kindergarten teacher might use to scold 6-year-olds for pulling each other's hair or scribbling on the walls with crayons. This, and the ongoing in-and-out scandal over improper election spending by the CPC, make the message we received a few days ago less than shocking. It is from a former staffer who we have confirmed to have worked for Conservative MPs. We have removed certain details to protect the identity of this individual. Reform MPs, quote, used their free round-trip tickets that are given every year for MPs to travel to their constituencies or any place where they could be of service to their country. But they misused these tickets and other parliamentary funds, not to serve the people of Canada, but to campaign for the Reform Party. The people directing this, and taking part in this, are the same people who are running the Harper Conservative government today, including Stephen Harper. End quote. Unsurprisingly, The government has asked the Speaker of the House to launch an investigation into our videos, no doubt because they're hoping to expose us as political operatives for other parties so they can garner sympathy and continue to paint themselves as victims. They will find themselves sorely disappointed. As we've stated before, the operations directed against the Conservative Party are motivated by their support for Bill C-30, which would legalize governmental spying on Canadians, and Bill C-11, which would criminalize online activities engaged in by the vast majority of Canadians. Anonymous would take action against any political party who produced these disgraceful bills. We are not agents of the NDP, the Bloc, Liberals, Conservatives or the Greens. We are regular people who are fed up with the disgraceful state of this country. We are people who will not allow the Canadian government to spy on its own citizens and protest it. We are people who will not allow this, or any government, to take control of the internet without a fight. Speaking of which, Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police spokesperson Huito had this to say about the hacking of their website. Quote, "We still maintain our support for Bill C-30. What this does is demonstrate quite clearly to Canadians the type of cyber crimes perpetuated every day. Mr. Huito, we pray you are exaggerating. It is very disturbing to imagine that the Canadian police are being successfully hacked every single day. You should really do something about that. If this is the case, it is certainly not by Anonymous. You also misunderstand the motivation for this operation. The purpose was never to change your stance on Bill C-30, but to demonstrate to the Canadian people that the police are utterly incompetent at securing information. Citizens of Canada, ask yourselves, if the police cannot even secure their own information, how will they secure yours? Better yet, you can ask Mr. Huito yourselves by using the email address listed in the description of this video, which has now been widely circulated as a result of this operation. Worse still is the statement made by Scott Naylor, an inspector with the Ontario Provincial Police Child Sexual Exploitation Unit, on the subject of police support for Bill C-30. Quote, "Obtaining warrants on all IP addresses involved in child pornography simply wasn't practical. This is certainly true. Obtaining warrants does limit and impede the ability of police to conduct investigations into any illegal activity, as does the protection against self-incrimination, better known as the right to remain silent, as does the right to habeas corpus, as does the right to a fair trial, as does the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. If our goal as a nation is simply to identify and imprison criminals, it would certainly be more practical to do away with all these limits on police and government powers. But if our goal as a nation is to be just, and to remain true to our fundamental principles as Canadians, we cannot sacrifice our civil rights in the name of security. We have seen where this path leads. It leads to innocent, law-abiding Canadians like me or are being sent overseas to Syria for interrogation and torture, the result of an unholy collaboration of Canadian law enforcement agencies with the FBI and the CIA. This is not a theory, abstraction or exaggeration. This is what occurs when the authorities use crime and national security as pretexts for conferring upon themselves more and more power, all the while laying waste to the liberty of the people they claim to serve. And a nation that sacrifices liberty for security deserves neither. That said, we want to caution Canadians to be skeptical of any message or video claiming to be from Anonymous that threatens violence upon members of the Canadian government. Fortunately, no such message has surfaced as of yet. Of course, it is not outside the realm of possibility that a misguided individual acting as Anonymous could create such a video. However, as Anonymous continues to expose the corruption of corporations and governments around the world, those in power will become increasingly desperate to discredit us. The likelihood of false flag operations being executed for this purpose increases every time we release information. The NSA of the United States has already declared Anonymous a threat to national security. What Anonymous truly is a threat to the emotional security of the greedy, the vile, and the corrupt. We will release more information on one such individual this Friday, as promised. Anonymous demands the immediate resignation of Vic Toews, the scrapping of Bills C-30 and C-11 in their entirety, and a formal apology to the people of Canada for referring to them as supporters of pedophilia, and more importantly, for attempting to infringe upon their most basic civil rights. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.